What's up, everyone? The NBA season is upon us. Today, we're going to talk about some tips, tricks, strategies, and things we've got to lead you into the NBA season for all things DFS. My name is Tyler Tamboline, aka Toe Tag and Tambo. I'm a top-ranked DFS player across multiple sports, but I've got two of the best in the world at NBA here with me today. On your way in, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe. It helps us out, bring these shows to you guys for free. But let's bring my guys in. I've got Hoop 2410, known in all sports across the board, winning millions of dollars in DFS, including an NFL Millie Maker recently. But we're here to talk NBA. I've got Hoop with me, and then I've got my other guy, AP, founder of Your DFS Playbook, now known as Rum Pure Sports, top-ranked tournament player in NBA, plenty of shippers across the board. AP, my man, how you doing today? Ready to talk some NBA?
Yeah, I am really excited for this. If anyone knows me, I'm a big process guy, especially when going through NBA. So I'm excited to break it down with you guys.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I plan to pick up some stuff as I go along as well. You guys out there, of course, take your notes. Hoop, got to bring you in, man. Love talking some NBA. It goes with your name so well. Again, I talked about all the other sports you're shipping in, but this is your bread and butter, right? How are you doing this week?
Yeah, it was my first love in DFS was NBA DFS. If you haven't played it, it's like DFS on like fast forward. It is nonstop action going consistently, a little bit different than the other sports. I mean, it is just nonstop action, which makes it so exciting when you build these teams and you're able to sit back and watch these games. When we built Rum Pure Sports, we knew that we were building a very, very strong NBA team. Obviously, that has kind of trickled into the other sports as we continue to just have massive wins by not only our coordinators, but our members as well across the board. But our NBA team is strong, and it continues to get stronger as we bring on more knowledgeable guys from across the industry. So really looking forward to NBA DFS starting. And like I said, if you haven't played it before, it is just a ton of fun, nonstop action.
Yeah, it's great. And there's a lot of great tips and tricks. Like I said, we're going to get into those here today and talk about them. But AP, I want to start with you, man. We'll get a few basics out of the way. Just talk to the people a little bit about the strategies across both sites, the scoring difference specifically with DraftKings and FanDuel, and what you notice out there.
Yeah, so anyone that's been following me, one thing I do got to start off by saying is the playbook, which is one of our foundational pieces. It was first built off the NBA. If you go back on my Twitter, back to 2017, when I started posting my stuff, you'll see the most basic version of an NBA playbook. And now here we are today, Rum Pure Sports. We have playbooks for every single sport. It's just awesome to think about. But yeah, FanDuel, DraftKings, we have just a little bit of a scoring difference there. On DraftKings, we get bonuses for double-doubles. We get bonuses for triple-doubles. And if a player converts a turnover, he gets a half-point hit to his scoring. On FanDuel, we don't have any bonuses. We do get more points, though, for steals and blocks and a full negative point hit for turnovers. So very, very simple. Everyone knows me, DraftKings guy, that's my preference. But when it comes to NBA, I do dabble on both sites.
Yeah, I love playing it on both sides too. Like you said, that the funny thing about me, I play a lot of NFL and PGA, but being at RPS, having the playbook, having the core plays, we'll talk more about that stuff later, of course. But for me, I can just use that information. It expedites the process. It simplifies the slate. It helps me find out what I need to and just start plugging things together. And then, of course, all the free shows that we'll have to offer. Hoop, I'm going to kick it over to you. Some more basics quickly, just to get these things out of the way. We probably have some people watching just wanting to get into DFS for NBA like I'm talking about. And the difference between cash games, what are they? What do those look like on the sites? And then GPPs, which is guaranteed prize pools, where there's a big number up top. And then it's, of course, divvied out across the prize pool that you can win. Let's say $1 million is the prize pool, 100,000 to first. That's how you shake those things out. Talk to the people a little bit about the difference between cash games and GPPs.
Yeah, so NBA DFS is kind of unique in the fact that line between cash games and GPPs, it's a little blurred because a lot of times the best plays in NBA DFS, which we'll talk about later, are just simply the best plays and they're almost unfadable. You think about it last season, if you followed the NBA, some of these times when Nikola Jokic went out there with like nobody else dressed, none of the main guys dressed, like you just have to play him. He was going to get you 60, 70 fantasy points. So not only does he have that massive floor, he has that massive ceiling as well. So he's a cash game lock. and a guy you want to get heavy exposure to where you can't necessarily find a pivot that can potentially get there. So the line is blurred. I'd say the difference between cash games and GPPs. Now, where you go with like the outside of your core is where you can get different, I think, in NBA. Like we have the cash core on the website. We have all our coordinators put GPP cores up as well. So you really just got to find those few little pivots to make your lineup different. In NBA DFS, the best plays are the best plays. So as I said in the opening, it's not as distinct of a difference in some of these other sports that you might see in PGA or NFL or MLB DFS. The best plays are the best plays. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to kind of differentiate between a cash game and a GPP play. When you're building your GPP teams, some little things you can kind of look to is, these superstars on the slate, because all of them just have massive upside regardless of who they're going against. So, James Harden, LeBron James, if one of them is going to be 40% owned, the other guy is going to be 10% owned, maybe you go to the 10% owned. So you can kind of look for little things like that in GPPs. But the main point here for me would definitely be that in NBA DFS, the good plays are just the good plays, and some guys are just too good to fade.
Yeah, and we're going to talk in a little bit about certain things like that, about sort of the minutes projections, how those break out. I know AP is going to talk a little bit later about making your lineups make sense. So like you mentioned, maybe if you go with LeBron, it's because somebody on the other side of that game is pushing him in order to get that ceiling game out of LeBron, maybe better for tournament situational stuff like that. Hoop, before I come back to you on some of our strategies, want to remind everybody very quickly, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel. This is a strategy show for free. We do a lot of free content shows as well. And then we'll talk later why you want to become a member at Run Pure Sports to get all the most important stuff. One of them being the Up to Lock show. And Hoop, I'm going to come right back to you, talk a little bit about outthinking our opponents. Well, one of the things I know that you can do in NBA to outthink your opponents is just be available and be available up to lock. A lot of news can change the slate significantly because like you talked about, Hoop, you could have a guy just slot in where all of a sudden he's going from off the bench to starting minutes. Minutes equal money, the projections there. Talk to us a little bit about that, how you stay on top of the news, rotational stuff, all of that, go through it for the people.
Yeah, news. I mean, that's what NBA DFS is all about. And it's the only DFS where the composition of the overall slate can completely flip based on one piece of news. Like if a superstar is ruled out, if Giannis, for example, because it happens a lot where he sits, you have to play $3 or $4 in your lineup. Now, prior to that news, you may not have been playing Giannis. You may not have been playing anyone on the Milwaukee Bucks team. As soon as he's ruled out, the Bucks guys become a priority, cash games, tournaments across the industry. So you have to stay on top of the news all the way up to lock. If you're the type of person that, after lock, you have responsibilities with the kid, or you've got to take your girlfriend out to dinner, if you're going to go to the movies and hold hands, it might not be a bad idea just to sit out the slate, because especially in this day and age of NBA DFS, you got to go all the way through the last game, which is usually at 10 p.m. Eastern, because one piece of news, like I said, can flip the slate. If you are, sitting on a lot of Nikola Jokic, they typically play West Coast. I've used this example before, but they typically play later games. If he's ruled out, you immediately have to play a bunch of Denver Nuggets guys. So that changes the slate. So the slate can continue to change all throughout the day, up to lock, and then beyond lock. So you need to stay up on top of the news. As you mentioned, we have our up to lock show, which gets you up until that first game that goes usually a mixture of JSU, AP, Big T, Holden on the show, just talking through all the news and how one guy ruled out can impact the slate specific to that day. So we have you covered on that end. Another way you can use our content to stay on top of the news is to be in our Discord chat. We have a Discord chat with all our coordinators active, not only our coordinators, but we have members that are just as knowledgeable as our coordinators, and they're breaking down all the news as well. So there's no other sport like this where the news can literally change the entire slate. One piece of news can change the entire slate, can change roster construction, can change the guys that you're targeting. So the news is and anyone that plays NBA DFS will tell you this, like the news is the most important part of playing NBA DFS.
Yeah, the N in NBA certainly does stand for news. AP, did you have anything to add on that stuff? And I know, too, we talk sometimes about these rotations, right? That's something you guys are big on, where you have to kind of know what that is. And if you know these rotations, in some cases, that can lead to you finding some lower owned plays or some options that maybe others weren't thinking about that are still in very good spots. So anything else to chime in on what Hoop just mentioned, and then lead us into talking about some of these low owned plays, how you can find those guys and what you look for on any given slate?
Yeah, especially early, like we can get an edge early by understanding coaching tendencies, understanding rotations, and taking advantage of inefficiencies in pricing from a DraftKings or FanDuel standpoint. Now, the problem is the market is not inefficient. It's very efficient. What I mean by that, people are sharp, and there's a lot of good chalk out there, and there is the occasional bad chalk, and you need a service like Rumpier. And I think we do the best at this, at identifying the good chalk and then highlighting some of the bad chalk out there too, and how to get different. I mean, Hoopster alluded to it. Like, this is a projection driven sport. We all have optimizers out there. I think we have the best in SaberSim, and anyone, like, you don't even have to know that much about the NBA, but if you take some of these projections from, any of the top sites out there, you're going to have an okay lineup. You're going to have a fine competitive lineup. If you're not using anything, you're going to be absolutely dust. But the edge that I think that we have is exactly what you guys said. We're taking you up to lock. We're helping you, we're evaluating the news as it comes in real time, and we're giving you the best plays. So as far as sleeper goes, I mean, it's a slate by slate type of thing. I think what can happen is we can identify, like with some of these studs, maybe it's a Cade Cunningham coming up this year. Maybe he gets priced up and people haven't, realized that this dude could have really, really good usage. He could carry this team on his back. He might have the upside that some of the other big names players have, but the industry hasn't adjusted to that. Now, this is a hypothetical, but I think what Rumpier does is we're the best at identifying those type of plays and helping our members take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing, like myself last year, just digging into NBA even further than I ever have before with everything at my fingertips. Like you mentioned, being a part of Rumpier Sports is incredible for me to find that stuff. I've often found, like, what the point was is you don't always find this sleeper or this diamond in the rough. I've talked about it with golf in the past, other sports in DFS. Sometimes it's as simple as everyone's on this $11,000 top stud, and there's somebody at 10,700 that is actually in a good spot later on in the night. People don't want to stick around for the news. If I just have that one go down, build my lineups accordingly to make them make sense, which I know you'll talk about later, AP, that is how I can sort of find somebody low owned and not need to find this special, oh, this guy's coming off the bench, he was really good in college, he might be the guy. Sometimes you don't need to do that. And Hoop, I want to give that thought to you. Like, sometimes we're looking to build we're always looking to build sharp lineups, but AP alluded to it. The projections are good. People have great numbers out there. They can put together good projected lineups. But how do we go about building them? I think that's probably the other big thing that we do is the roster construction aspect to build something that still is solid without sacrificing the upside. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough in NBA DFS. As I mentioned before, like some of these good plays, they're just good plays, and you have to be on them. The superstars always lead the way in scoring. Like they always do. These especially on DraftKings, where you get the extra points for the bonuses, the double-double and the triple-double, and then you only lose a half a point on a turnover. So you want guys with the ball in your hands, and that's obviously the superstars on these teams. So a lot of times, like a stars and scrubs approach can work on these slates. Even we always talk about it with these like really cheap guys on these slates. Big T and myself and everyone on our team has kind of adapted this method where if you're playing a really cheap guy, it's not necessarily what he does for you, but it's what he does for the rest of your lineup. Can you get that second superstar in there opposed to one? The superstars on DraftKings can go out there and get you 80 fantasy points. I mean, that's just massive what they're able to do with the triple double bonus. Oh, and the other thing is knocking down threes on DraftKings. If you hit a 3-pointer, you get a bonus as well. So these superstars can just get way, way up there on DraftKings, but that comes into play. Like, are you sacrificing too much to get those lineups? A lot of our team, we're willing to take that risk in order to get the superstars in there, because of how high the ceiling is for these guys, and the floor is high as well. Ownership in NBA DFS, how can you play around with ownership, or how can you use it to your advantage? The one example I always like to bring up is on these superstars. All these superstars can go off. So let's say, I know it's not going to be the case this year, but in the past, the Utah Jazz have always had a really good defense. So if a superstar is going up against the Utah Jazz and the other superstar is going up against a crappy defense, you're always going to choose that superstar that's going against the crappy defense. That's the one that's going to get all the ownership. But we've seen it so many times over the years. These guys are unguardable. They can get theirs in tough matchups. So that superstar against the crappy defense is going to be 50% owned. That superstar against the Utah Jazz or whatever good defense you want to plug in there is only going to be 10%. Maybe you make sure you get overweight on the superstar going up against that good defense, because like I've said, they have that upside regardless of matchup. These guys are matchup proof. So that's just, a few ways you can go through ownership and kind of use it to your advantage. It's just a very dynamic DFS sport.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is slate to slate. So, AP is going to talk about that here in a second. But I think the thing you just brought up, and I know this show is for seasoned players, it's for intermediate, it's for beginner. A lot of people have at least, in some format played some sort of fantasy football. And the point you just mentioned makes me think so much about these receiver versus cornerback matchups, where people used to take that so much into account because, this guy can't go up against this guy. There's just no way. But like you said, if they're good enough, they can run those routes. It's the same in NBA. Some of these superstars are just so good and they're going to have those big nights. It doesn't matter who it's up against. And in some cases, they actually relish that fact of people are telling me this is a good D and I can't do it, but I'm the alpha. I'm going to go out there and do it. And they go off and they take extra shots and they put up extra buckets. They get those bonuses, all of those factors you just mentioned. So I think that's a huge point to mention with ownership, where if it's going one way, don't just lean away from it in another spot. And especially if you're playing multiple lineups, using our tools like what we have with our optimizer with SaberSim, there's easy ways to do it. There's tutorials to guide you through it. And so keep that in mind when you're out there building with us and with SaberSim. AP, anything else to add on what we just talked about? And then if so, or if not, you can go into the next point of making your lineups make sense. We talked about it earlier with projections being a big factor, but then how do you shift them around to make it so that you still don't have the same lineup as everybody else and you still get different on a given slate?
Yeah, by making sure your lineups make sense. I do think there's a few terms that you got to understand. You got to understand, usage rates. Like how does offensive usage impact what a player is going to do? Their fantasy point per minute, rate, their minutes projection. What is their rotation typically going to be like on a given night? How does the overall team's rotation impact that player? There's going to be some rotations out there where in tournaments where we can get a little bit different, where there's a key six man that comes off, has a higher usage rate when other players are off the court. Maybe they're not getting the most minutes, but they're very highly productive when they are on the court. So when I'm looking at my finished lineup, I got to know what contest I'm in. I'm typically like a 3 max type of player. Multi-entry tournaments, it's still a tournament, even though it's 3 max. I usually target, 1,000, entry field, sometimes higher. But I got to look at my lineup and I got to think about what the field's doing. I want a very efficient lineup. I want a lot of upside built into my lineup. I want to make sure that if I'm fading like a potential really good play, I got to make sure my lineup makes sense. Like why am I fading that play? So, and there's going to be many opportunities out there where you can't do that, but more often than not, you're just going to be locking that play in too. And you're going to be very surprised at what that gets you into your lineup. Hoop talked about it. Some of these value plays that come out that are a result of an injury. The NBA is a really unique sport. Okay. So compare it to NFL, obviously going on right now. We're all used to that. If Adam Thielen's out, now the defense can focus on Justin Jefferson, okay? So it isn't like a guarantee that he's necessarily going to go off because the defense can now scheme him. The difference in NBA is when a player is out, other players benefit because their usage rates go up. They're often, the opportunity to score more points goes up. The ball is going to be in their hands more often. Or a bench player who is now a value is now getting an increased role in that offense via more minutes. So they got more opportunity, et cetera, the ability for more fantasy points. So in those type of situations, more often than not, you're just locking those plays in. But to finalize that, your lineup's making sense. You just got to, make sure that you're playing the best plays, You're attacking the right games. You're making sure that, the teams that you're targeting are bad defensively. You want high-paced games, and we've been working on our projections and our previews for the different conferences. We're going to have a ton of opportunity, I think, in this Western Conference. So we're going to be stacking up games in some of these later games, that start later in the evening. So it's going to be a ton of fun. But Tambo, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, I'll come back to you in a second. Hoop, I'll get you to just tie it all down. One thing that people ask a lot about, because I mentioned this, to you guys before, you come into NBA when NFL is on, sort of baseball, MLB is wrapping up. As a DFS player playing multiple sports, I'm like, stack everything up. Let's stack this. Let's stack that.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts when it comes to NBA on stacking, game stacks? Maybe just round out AP's thoughts there with the stacking topic and see what you got with that.
Yeah. So when it comes to stacking in NBA, it's not like the other sports. Like correlation is not as important where you see it in NFL. If you're playing a quarterback, you probably want one wide receiver with him, and you probably want at least someone on the other team coming back, so you can get this back and forth type thing. And we've seen that play out where all the winning lineups in NFL have some form of correlation to them. MLB. You're definitely stacking up offenses. You're, looking to get, if a team scores 10, you want as much of those 10 runs as you can possibly get via the fantasy points. In NBA, it's not necessarily the case. Now, let me take a step back and say, if you do stack up a game and it goes to overtime, I don't think there is a better feeling in DFS in general. If you have, multiple guys from the same game and that thing goes to overtime, you're almost automatically making some sort of money with those lineups, unless there's an injury or something that happened along the way. That's almost a guaranteed winner. It's a great feeling. Now, going into overtime, you cannot project that whatsoever. I mean, people might look at close spreads and say, this game has a chance going into overtime because it's a close spread. Not necessarily the case. Very hard to hit that. The one spot where I do kind of like correlation in NBA DFS is with these point guards, because you see it all the time. You'll see a back and forth battle between point guards. Those are the guys that have the ball in their hands the most. If they want to take it amongst themselves to go in there and try to get buckets, they can do it more so than any other position. So guys that might be handling the ball a lot, I don't mind, pairing them together, but more times than not, you don't really want to overdo it unless, again, there's that big injury that comes in with Giannis. I like to use that example because he's a massive fantasy asset. When he's out, that production's going elsewhere, and you have to load up. So if you are already loading up on the Bucks and they're playing the Suns that night, you might want to take a look at a Devin Booker or something as well to hope that game kind of stays competitive. So long story short, it's not as important as the other sports. Definitely correlation that is not as important as NFL, not as important as MLB, but there are some little things that you can kind of look at doing. A lot of times I use it more of a tiebreaker. If I'm deciding between two guys and I have two guys, facing one of the guys I'm deciding on, the correlation there kind of makes sense, but overall it's not as important as some other sports.
Yeah, I think you nailed it perfectly there. My takeaway would be, and I think this works for everybody, is just if you don't build for it, but if it ends up making sense, like what AP talked about earlier, if you have these great value plays, so you get 2 or 3 of them because of a big injury, and you were already liking the superstar in that game on the other side, you may just happen to have natural correlation in your lineup. And that's awesome, because then if you do get lucky and it goes to overtime, it's not like baseball where a guy in the extra inning could pop a walk-off home run and it's over and your guys didn't even get to see their at-bats. Or football, the flip of the coin, if they score the touchdown, the game's over. You have the running back on the other side. You probably have 3 or 4 guys that are starters in this OT, getting those minutes, getting those opportunities to the things that AP talked about earlier. And we do a great job at Run Pure breaking down the glossary of all these terms, but the usage rates, right? All the minutes you're getting, fantasy points per minutes, all those factors just naturally fall into place if you do get an overtime, but not something you can really project for. So hopefully that helps tie things down. AP, speaking of tying things down, I want to come back to you. We got to get out of here, but I want you first. Just let the people know everything that we've got going on. Last year was incredible at Run Pure Sports. Year before that, great. But we keep getting better and better. And I know we keep adding more. So let people know what they can expect at Run Pure Sports with our NBA DFS product.
Yeah, so the NBA is different. It's really hard to get content up early and for it to end up being accurate at the end of the night. And I don't think a lot of people like understand that fully. And, so one thing, we got core plays, we have our, so like what the core plays are, a portion, usually right around 70% of the lineup from our top players, Big T, JSU, myself, Hoop, and then we have others for FanDuel, DraftKings, Super Draft, etc. These come out right around 30 minutes, sometimes 20, 15 minutes up to lock. You got to be ready for these. And the reason is because we're evaluating the injury news as it comes in. You're going to see other sites out there with core plays posted, or their core plays posted at like 11 in the morning, 10 in the morning. Come on, man. We don't have all of the news yet. You can't possibly, have a good idea of what like a core play is going to be at that point in time. So bear with us with that and trust our process in our core plays. I'm going to have to repeat this multiple times for the first month. Is what it is. Now I'm used to it. But we do have other content that comes out early. Our NBA playbook, that is typically up 2 to 3 hours before lock. That is going to give you an overview of the entire slate, a breakdown of each game. And it's going to highlight players. It's going to pick players out from each game that you can start thinking about. What I would suggest you do is create your own have a little notepad if you're kind of old school, or pull up a Google Doc and start making your own notes so that when the core plays hit, you can adjust. We have tournament and cash player pools. Hoop and Mangone and Tidal do an excellent job each and every day of giving you an idea of who the best cash plays are with their cash player pools right there. Big T, he's going to have his player pool up typically for each slate. It's tougher with NBA. Mind you that so much news hits late, but I'm very confident he's going to have his player pool up there. We have heat maps. We're going to introduce a FanDuel heat map. I run the DraftKings heat map. What the heat map is, NBA is also unique in that we have multiple different lock times. We have a 7 o'clock lock time, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. What the heat map is going to do is going to give you an overview, a big picture view of the slate, and it's going to highlight the best plays. It's going to highlight injury situations. It's going to highlight leverage plays or tournament plays. And it's a resource that you can easily look at. And you can kind of determine, how do I want to build my lineup, for the night? Do I want to backload? Do I want to load up? Do I want to be Big T 777, load up early on in the slate? So that's the purpose of the heat map. We're going to have that for DraftKings and FanDuel. We have live shows, 2 shows each and every day. I think one of the most important and why you should be a member is that Up to Lock show. It's more of like a panel. Most of the time we have 4 people on there. K Fallick usually gets on there with Big T, JSU, Holden. They are talking through their thoughts as they are building their lineups. I don't know anyone else that's doing that. Sure, there's other shows and stuff going up to lock, but these are top players going through their process, talking through their exact plays all the way up to lock. It is such a great value. Our projections as well, and our partner SaberSim, they're going to help you. If you're a multi-entry player, that really one of the best tools out there. And then our Discord. Last but definitely not the least, we have so many sharp people in Discord talking all day, strategy all day, from 5 a.m. in the morning to 4 a.m. at night. I know Hoopster and I were in the sheets at that time, so we will not be participating. But I do get up early, and it's crazy. Like, the Discord is popping all day long, and so get in there, participate, have fun. And Tambo, I'm excited for NBA to get here, man.
Yeah, me too. Like you said, a lot of great things there that you mentioned. Hoop, did you have anything else you want to add to that before I get us out of here?
That was a phenomenal rundown there by AP. I don't have anything really to add, but the main point would be that we're excited at Run Pure Sports for NBA DFS to start. And like I said, and AP has said, and you have said, we have the best team in the industry for NBA DFS, not only NBA DFS, the other sports as well. But man, our NBA team is strong. We made additions last year, added guys like Glock to the mix, Glaucoma, just a phenomenal NBA DFS mind. We're excited over here. We know that we have the content that can make you an NBA DFS winner. So come join us.
Yeah, I always got to put my cherry on top. I love the breakdown. AP gave all the core, the content, everything that we have to offer. You added on top. And I got to say this, one thing I can't stress enough, whether you want to be a serious DFS player, do like some of us and play full time, or whether you just want to take it serious and get serious about making money, join Run Pure Sports. It's players that are actually playing thousands to tens of thousands of dollars per night on what we're talking about. That's the other X factor that we have. We're putting all this money behind it, so you know the research has been put in. But like AP said, if you've got the content at Run Pure Sports, you can have the slow release. You've got the playbook comes up, formulate a plan. You wait around for the core plays, watch the free show, get some ideas there. Then as the Up to Lock show comes on, you turn that on and you start getting ready to build your lineups, whether it's Saber Sim in front of you or some hand builds that you're going to do a 3-max tonight just to get your feet wet. All the options are there at your fingertips from real players, real pros. I talk about RPS meaning so much more, real proven strategies on top of just Run Pure Sports that you guys can get in. And if you want to stop watching us win and seeing those logos at the top and start winning with us, join runpuresports.com. That's going to do it for this show, guys. For Hoopster, for AP, and for myself, Toe Tag and Tambo. Come join us. Simon, get us out of here.